Straight away we'll get on with the topic that we were there on last week. So last week we started with this particular topic, which is on we did the LKS 8 part. Now we look at LKS 21. Okay. So in case if the screen doesn't move or the presentation slides doesn't move, just keep me informed. You can unmute your mic and just speak on, because sometimes I might not know whether the presentation is moving or not. Okay. So let's start with chapter on LKS 21, which talks about the effects of changes in foreign exchange rates. So you know that especially in the case of banking business, we are exposed to foreign exchange. Foreign exchange means foreign currencies, because we have exposures for foreign currencies, especially in the case of when you have loans, you might have foreign currency loans which are designated in foreign currencies. Similarly, then you have deposits, that is maybe from non-residents, it could be from people who are working abroad. So there could be a lot of instances where you might open foreign currency denominated deposits. So all these foreign currency deposits, advances are subject to changes in exchange rates. So you know what is an exchange rate is. Today the dollar rate, the rupee equivalent of $1 is called the exchange rate. So likewise, you have rates for GBP, Euro, Australian dollars. Likewise, you have currencies. So for all these currencies, there is a rupee equivalent. One unit of a particular currency, but is the equivalent of rupees. So that is what we call as exchange rate. So today in the sense, if you look at the dollar rupee rate, it will be around somewhere around 185 to 190 rupees per dollar is that amount. So when it comes to financial reporting, we cannot be reporting in all these currencies, where you will report certain amounts in rupees, certain amounts in dollars, certain amounts in euro. No. Financial statements have to be presented in one currency. That is the norm. So what we have to do is either we have to convert all the other currencies into one currency. So if you are going to present your financial statements in dollars, then you have to convert all the other currencies into dollars. Now that is applicable to somewhere like countries like US, because their base currency is dollars, but our base currency is Sri Lankan rupees. So whenever we want to present our financial statements, our currency that we need to present is in rupees. So what we need to do is we have to convert all our foreign currency exposures, whether it could be loans, either it could be deposits, it could be cash, all those into rupees using an exchange rate. Now the fluctuations in exchange rate has an impact in the financial statement. Okay, so that is what we are going to look at by way of this LKS 21 standard. But for exam purposes, this doesn't have a big binding on your examination, because so far I think it has not tested to a great extent. But there had been instances where they want to write you certain definitions, what we are going to look at, or maybe one simple adjustment in the question number 1, where you need to look at what would be the value at the reporting date. So we will look at an example that will give you an idea. So let's start with the LKS 21. This standard shall be applied in accounting for transactions and balances in foreign currencies. So wherever there are foreign currencies, whenever you have foreign currencies only, this standard will be applicable. And they say except those derivative transactions and balances. So derivative transactions are certain transactions which are booked in your balance sheet or maybe in your P&L, which are not your normal transactions. Like say there could be forward exchange transactions, Likewise, there could be transactions which are known as derivative transactions. So what we do here, basically, we do a translation. We call it as a translation. Now, this is not something where you translate from English to Tamil or Sinhala or maybe Sinhala Tamil to English, not that. The conversion from dollars into rupees is known as a translation. That is called a translation. So in translating the results and financial position of a foreign operation that are included in the financial statements of an entity by consolidation, proportionate consolidation, or the equity method. So this might be looking very complicated, but let me give you in simple terms. Now say you have a bank which has a branch in some other foreign country. Okay, you have a branch. So now what happens when you present your financial statements? Okay, when you present your financial statements, now you have your head office in Sri Lanka. Let's say you have a branch in US, right? Very unlikely, but still we take that example. We have a branch in US. Now in the branch that you have in US will operate in what currency? They will operate in US dollars. They are not going to use Sri Lankan rupees. So they will have US dollars and all the other currencies as well. But for all purposes, they will prepare their financial statements in US dollars. So your branch in US will have financial statements in US dollars. But being a bank in Sri Lanka, when you present your financial statements, you will take all your branches in Sri Lanka, which is already in rupees. And now you have to consider this branch that you have in US. That branch is for accounting purposes, we call it as foreign operation. Please underline that word, foreign operation. That is a foreign operation. Now, sometimes what happens, you might have incorporated companies separately. You can go and incorporate a company in that country. Sometimes what happens, that will become one of your subsidiaries. That is not one of your foreign operation. Now here what we talk about is a foreign operation. Foreign operation means where you have a branch of yours located in another country. So that country will have a base currency of maybe dollars or whatever, and you will have rupees here. So what you have to do is when you are consolidating means you take all the Sri Lankan operations, you take this foreign operation and add together. Now, if you think that Sri Lankan operation is like apples and this foreign operation is oranges, you can't add apples and oranges and give a number. That is very straightforward. So what you need to do, you need to convert these oranges into apples. Or in other words, you have to convert this foreign operation balances, which is in dollars, into rupees. That is known as a translation. That is known as a translation. So translation of foreign operation is very important for consolidation purposes. Consolidation means adding for financial reporting. So in translating an entity's result and financial position into presentation currency. Now that is where very important. Now we are coming up with the first definition. Now you have a base currency. I will explain what is the name given for a base currency. Now in Sri Lanka, you have a base currency of rupees. For this foreign operation in US, you have a base currency of dollars. But end of the day, you have to convert both these into rupees. Okay. So let me put it on the board so that you will understand better. Now let's take, this is Sri Lanka. Right? And this is ABC Bank. So you operate in the base currency of LKR. Right? Now you have a branch. This is ABC Bank's branch in US branch. We'll say US branch. So they might have some same name of ABC something there. No, this is not a separate company. Please be mindful about that. Now there, the base currency is USD. So when you are preparing financial statements, you have to add the two. You have to add the two. Adding the two is known as consolidation. Please remember these names, it will be important. Adding the two is called consolidation. So likewise, you can have any number of branches. So if you are adding all those into one, that is called consolidation. Right. Now, this is in rupees, this is in dollars. How can you add rupees and dollars together? No, you can't do that. You can't do that. So first what you have to do is convert these dollars into rupees. Convert these dollars into rupees. And that is what known as translation. Please remember these names: consolidation, translation. So you are converting your P&L and the balance sheet of your US branch into rupees, which is known as translation. Now, when you use translation, what you have to do? You have to look at how much is $1 US converting into rupees. How much $1 US is in terms of rupees. So you convert everything into rupees, and now you can edit with this. So now only you can consolidate, not previously. Not previously. Now only you can consolidate. So this is what called as the consolidation process. You have operation here, you have a branch here. Straight away you can't add the two because they have a one currency, you have another currency. So you can't do that. Now we come into an agreement that you can add the two when you have it in one currency only. So this is already in rupees. I will convert this into rupees, which is called a translation. Then I have both these operations in rupees, where I can add. So by doing that, what am I doing? I am presenting my financial statements in one particular currency. That is known as the presentation currency. Okay. So please take down this. So let's right. So now we come to a definition which is called the functional currency. Now, functional currency is the currency of the primary economic environment in which the entity operates. So, going back to the same example, we know the primary economic environment in which the entity operates. So, this ABC Bank, its head office and the other branches are operating in Sri Lanka. So, the primary economic environment is Sri Lanka. Now, what is the primary economic environment's currency? That is rupees. Now, the branch which is in US, so their primary economic environment is United States. What is the currency there? That is dollars. So, what do you mean by functional currency is basically the currency that is applicable where you operate. If you operate in, let's say, Europe, you will be using euro. If you are operating in Australia, you will be using Australian dollars. So that is what it means. So functional currency is the currency that is being used, or maybe in other words, applicable currency, the base currency in the country which you operate. So the presentation currency is already known. Presentation currency is the currency in which the financial statements are presented. As I told you, in this case, it is rupees. Then foreign currency is a currency other than the functional currency. So in Sri Lanka also, we have US dollars, GBP, Euro, all those are there. But how do we call them? We call them as foreign currency, because anything other than the functional currency, for me, it is a foreign currency. Okay. So because of that only, we in the banks, we call that Sri Lanka rupee deposits. But the rest, we call it as foreign currency deposits. Okay. So you need to know these terms and how it is differentiated. Then finally, we need to know what is a closing rate. The closing rate is known as the spot exchange rate. Spot exchange rate. Please note that term. Spot exchange rate is known as the currently applicable the currency rate. Now, this currency rate that you use as at the reporting date is known as the closing rate. Say, for example, if I am a 31st December company, my financial year ends on 31st December, whatever the rates that are applicable on 31st December, how much is $1 into rupees, how much is €1 into rupees, how much is 1 GBP into rupees, that is known as the closing rate. So you might have seen central bank publishes every day exchange rates. Now, banks may have a different rate compared to the rate published by the central bank. Okay. So their closing rate might be different to that of what is published by the central bank. And even more than that, when it comes to customer transactions, it is much more different to what we have as published by the central bank, because banks will create a margin on those exchange rate transactions. Okay. When you are selling currency or when you are buying currency, so you will add up a margin. So it is not always the rate that is published by the central bank that you will see in the bank branches. So sometimes people will come and complain. Now you see central bank has published this rate, why you are taking a different rate, a higher rate? No, the understanding is bank, for doing that service, they have a markup or margin created on those rates. Then trade exchange rate is the exchange rate for immediate delivery. If you are selling currency or buying currency, what is the rate that you will use? That is called spot exchange rate. So the spot exchange rate is the rate applicable today. So when you go tomorrow, there will be again a spot exchange rate that is applicable for tomorrow. Okay. Likewise, the rates will vary. So foreign operation, I have already explained, is a subsidiary, associate, joint venture, or branch of the reporting enterprise. Okay. Net investment in a foreign operation is the amount of the reporting entity's interest in the net assets of that operation, which means now if I go and invest money in a foreign operation, the ultimate result that I can take is whatever that they are net position. Net position. Monetary items. Monetary items are currency held and assets and liabilities to be received or paid in fixed or determinable number of units of currency. So monetary items is, if you look at your balance sheet, there could be various types of assets we looked at initially. So out of these assets, wherever it involves currencies, that is known as monetary assets, which includes anything to be received or paid. But anything of not in that kind is known as non-monetary items. Non-monetary items. Okay. So now we come to an important part, which is recognition of exchange differences. Okay. Just read through this, then I will explain you on the board what is how these are treated. Right. Now let's look at the board and see whether we understand this properly. Right? You have to understand this clearly. Right. Now let's look at I am looking at from the point of view of a bank. So I have a foreign currency deposit. Foreign currency deposit. Please follow this. This is very important. Foreign currency deposit. So foreign currency deposit. If the bank has a foreign currency deposit, that is a liability to the bank. Okay. Right. So let us assume that on 1/1/20 there is a brought forward balance of let's say this is 19, brought forward balance of $100, 100 USD. Yeah, this is a USD deposit account. USD deposit account. Okay, right. Let's stick to this $100. We are not going to change anything for any purpose, right? So let's say let's make it $1,000 rupees, $1,000, right? $1,000. Now, on 1st of January 2019, when you are taking this deposit for financial reporting, what would you do? You will convert this into rupees using a exchange rate. Okay, right. So I will take this in 2019. I will take this as on that day it was 175 rupees per dollar was 175 rupees. So what is my rupee equivalent? 175,000 rupees. Is that understood? Now when I reported my balance on 1/1/2019, it was 175,000 rupees, but $1,000. $1,000. Right. Now I come to the end. That is 31/12/2019. Okay. 31/12/2019. So which means again the carried down balance is 1,000. I have not changed anything. And the brought forward balance of 20 will be again 1,000. There is no difference. Okay. Now, as at the year end, so this is actually as at the year end. Now this is as at 31st December 2019. Let's say this dollar rate has gone to 180. 180. So what is my rupee balance now? 180,000. 180,000. So at the beginning of the year, I had $1,000. The rate was 175, and the rupee was 175,000. Okay, 175,000. But when it came to December 2019, it went up to 180. So my rupee equivalent is 180,000. Now you see there is a difference of 5,000 rupees. 5,000 rupees. Now what is that? That is known as, I'll write it here, exchange gain. Exchange gain, which goes into the P&L. Okay, because when you had this $1,000, there is a change which has happened to the rupee equivalent. So the rupee equivalent change is actually, I should not say that it is a gain, it is actually a loss. It is a loss. Okay. Why it is a loss? Because your liabilities are going up. Your liabilities are going up means what should happen? You will have to recognize a P&L expense. P&L expense. Okay. Is that clear? Now, if I am to give you an example, this is 175,000. Right? So, which means this is also 175,000. So, so which means now, earlier it was 175,000. Now it has gone up to 180,000 because of the dollar rate. So here it is 180,000. Here it is 180,000. Now, if you look at it at this level, for you to balance this side you have 180, this side you have only 175,000. So what you need to do? You need to add 5,000 rupees. 5,000 rupees. Now, when you credit here, it is going as a debit to the P&L. So you will have a exchange loss. Exchange loss. That is how it arises. Brought forward is $1,000. So 175 means 175,000. At the year end also it is $1,000. $1,000 means it's the same amount, but the dollar rate has changed. So it has gone up to 180. So I have 180,000 here. Now when I want to balance at this level, this side 180, but this side only 175. So what should I do? I will bring in another 5,000. So I am crediting this account with 5,000 rupees, which means I have to debit my exchange loss account with 5,000 rupees. Okay. This is how the exchange rate differences take place. Now, what is actually happening? I initially had $1,000 at 175 rupees per dollar. At the year end, again I had the same $1,000, but my rupee equivalent has changed. My rupee equivalent has changed. This process, we call it as foreign currency revaluation. So don't get mixed up with the revaluation that we learned under property, plant and equipment, LKS 16. No, that has nothing to do with this. This is something to do with the change of foreign currency into rupee equivalent, or maybe the functional currency into the presentation currency. So the change is from functional currency to the presentation currency. That process will involve a foreign currency revaluation. So this entire thing is known as foreign currency revaluation. Okay, please take down. Now, if there is a foreign currency asset, if there is a foreign currency asset, right? If there is a foreign currency asset. Now, this is like with an assumption that I am giving. We assume that the foreign currency asset value has not changed. If it is $1,000, even next year end it was $1,000, right? Okay, on that assumption. So if there is a foreign currency asset, two things can happen. Okay, two things can happen. That is, I'll put that here, exchange rate. Okay, exchange rate. Now, when there is a foreign currency asset, if the exchange rate increase, if there is a foreign currency asset and if the exchange rate increase, you will end up with the exchange gain. You will end up having an exchange gain. Okay. So if it reduces, decrease, simply you will have a exchange loss. Exchange loss, which means in one particular, in 2019 December, the dollar rate was 180. When it comes to 2020, the dollar rate has come down to 170. Means the result will be an exchange loss. When you do a revaluation, it will be a exchange loss. Now we look at a foreign currency liability. If the exchange rate increase, it will be an exchange loss. That is what we looked at, the example. If it decrease, this you have to remember, very important, because in exams, application of this will be very important. Sometimes candidates will do the calculation erroneously. Instead of booking an exchange gain, you might book an exchange loss. Okay, so you have to be very clear. If you are having a foreign currency asset and if the rate goes up, you have to have an exchange gain. So what would be the double entry? You will have to debit the asset and credit the P&L with exchange gain. If the dollar rate or the exchange rate decreases, then you will have an exchange loss. So you will debit foreign exchange loss or exchange loss in the P&L and credit the asset. Credit the asset. Similarly, when it is a foreign currency liability, if the exchange rate increases, you will have an exchange loss. So again, debit the P&L, credit the liability account. If it is a decrease, then you will have an exchange gain, means you will credit the P&L and debit the liability account. So you have to be thorough with your journals, the impact, what you will do. Okay, so I'll put that also here. Credit goes to the P&L, a debit to the P&L, a debit to the P&L, and a credit to the P&L. So I'm not talking about the other leg of the transaction that you can write it for your information. Okay. Right. Okay, so that is what I spoke about when it comes to foreign exchange. Okay. Now, what we looked at was what is going into the P&L, right? But there are instances where the impact of same is not going into the P&L. Now, say for example, we spoke about something known as translation of a foreign operation. Translation of a foreign operation. So when you translate a foreign operation also, you might get gains and losses in foreign exchange. So those are not taken to the P&L. Those are not taken to the P&L. Those are taken into the P&L through something called other comprehensive income. Other comprehensive income. So I told about this other comprehensive income when we were doing LKS 16, where the revaluation of property, plant and equipment is not taken to the P&L. Can you remember? The revaluation gain or loss is not taken to the P&L, right? But in the case of an investment property, the revaluation gain, we call that as a fair valuation. So the fair valuation gain or loss is taken to the P&L. I clearly explained the difference. Likewise, here also, if it is directly to do something with the foreign currency asset and liability where it's impacting the foreign currency asset or liability, you will directly take it to the P&L. But when it comes to the translation of a foreign operation, like a branch, like a subsidiary, an associate, whatever it could be, when you translate those into your presentation currency, any gains or losses are recognized not in the P&L, but in the equity. That is routed through the OCI or the other comprehensive income. Okay, so this slide gives you that the second bullet point is this. If gains or losses.
Sir, excuse me.
Yeah.
Please re-explain second point.
Right. Now, what we looked at on the board short while ago is where you do a revaluation of your foreign currency assets and liabilities. Now, if you are a bank, you will revalue all your foreign currency assets and liabilities. That is, straight away there will be an exchange gain or loss on your monetary assets, which will be taken into the P&L. In the P&L, you will have one line called exchange foreign exchange gain or loss from revaluation. Okay, but now we are talking slightly different. At the inception of this topic, I told you that there is something known as a foreign operation. This foreign operation could be a branch of yours, or it could be a subsidiary, or it could be an associate, whatever. You have a company there, or you can have a branch. Now what will happen? You are here having all your transactions in rupees. You have a branch in US, which is the functional currency is dollars. Now you are trying to convert that foreign operation into rupees. Okay. So when you compare the 2 years, let's say you take the one financial year in 2019 and then you take the 2020. Now, when you revalue your foreign operation in the 2 years, if there is a gain or loss, which is from the translation of a foreign operation, okay, that gain or loss is not taken to the P&L. That gain or loss is not taken to the P&L. That is taken into the equity through an item called other comprehensive income. Other comprehensive income. So it is very important what you take to the P&L and what you take to the equity, because those are the two elements of your equity component. One is your profit that you earn, one is the reserves that you may create. So this foreign currency is going into that reserve element. Reserve element. So I want you to take down a note here. Okay, that is on the bullet point number 2. The translation of a foreign operation, the translation of a foreign operation, the translation of a foreign operation could result in a translation gain, or a translation loss. Translation gain or a translation loss. In either of the situation, next line, in either of the situation, it will be recognized in the OCI, that is other comprehensive income, in the OCI and taken to foreign currency translation reserve. What you see on the board, foreign currency translation reserve, foreign currency translation reserve, foreign currency translation reserve in equity, in equity. Okay, so when you look at a company's balance sheet, you have assets, you have liabilities, and then you have equity, right? Now, when you look at your equity, I am going back to the very first topic, accounting equation. So the equity had, let's say, 3 elements. You had your capital, you have your P&L, you have your reserves. Okay. This is very important. This understanding has to be very important. So what we are talking here, capital is what the shareholders have given you, the money given by the shareholders. So using that money, you will earn some, you will generate certain income and expense. That is your P&L. So that is why This includes income and expense. Okay. So while you run the business, there are certain elements which are created, or we call them as reserves. Reserves. So all these reserves, mostly some reserves may be a transfer of profits into the reserve, or some reserves will be actually the revaluation reserve. What you have learned so far. Then now we are learning the foreign currency translation reserve. Likewise, you can have several reserves. Now, all these type of reserves are routed through something known as OCI, other comprehensive income. Other comprehensive income. So, any gain or loss, you don't take it here. That is very important. That is what you need to understand. So, the equity, when I say equity, it has three elements: the capital, the P&L, and the reserves. So, what we are talking here, the gain or loss resulting from a translation of a foreign operation is routed through the OCI, and that is reported in a reserve. And that reserve is known as a foreign currency translation reserve. Hope it's clear. So all these you will understand when we do questions. Okay. Right now we are trying to learn the theory. So you have to have this theory background, then only when you do the question, you will understand. Okay, this I should take into this, this I should take into this. But you need to know why I am taking into that. That is what we are trying to learn. So any revaluation of a foreign currency asset or liability is taken here. But any revaluation gain or loss of a foreign operation is taken here. That is the difference. Okay. So this I think I have already explained to you. The presentation currency. So as I told you, assets and liabilities are translated at closing rate. Income and expenses are translated at actual rate, average rate, maybe whatever. Exchange differences are taken to equity through other comprehensive income in the case of non-funded assets, and cumulative exchange reclassified to profit or loss on a disposal surplus. Okay, and this we have already looked at. What we have to look at next is the inventories. Okay. Any questions? So let's move on to the topic of inventories, which is again a standard. But we are not going into very detail into this standard. In the recent past, I have observed that certain questions are being asked on this area. So better you have a clear idea on this also, so that you can tackle it in the exams. Mostly it has come on MCQ, and also once I think it was part of a essay question. So what does it say? This standard prescribes the accounting treatment for inventories. What do you mean by inventory? What do you mean by inventory? Anyone? What do you mean by inventory? Anyone? Inventory is known as stocks. Very good. Inventory is known as the stock that you are holding. Say if you are running a business, what you will do is you will have, let's say, I always take this example. It's easy for me to explain. Damro. Let's take Damro. Now, Damro is a manufacturer of furniture, or even though now they have moved into other areas as well. But let's take primarily Damro is a company which manufactures furniture, plastic furniture. So what they do, they manufacture furniture and they take it to their showroom and then sell it. Okay. So when it is being manufactured in the factories, we call it as work in progress. Work in progress. That is, it is being done. Once you have the complete product, that is your finished good or finished product. Now this finished product is taken into your stocks first. You take it as a stock. Now what will happen? The stock is what is being displayed in your showrooms. So when you go to a showroom of Damro, you will see there are furniture items being kept there. Now all those are taken into their stocks, because that is one of their assets. So once they decide to sell these assets, or there is a demand for their assets, what they will do, they will sell it. So when they sell it, what they will do is they will have a markup. We call it as a markup. Now this, with the markup only, they will sell the product. That is where they make profits. So it's a complete process. When you look at the entire thing, it is a complete process. So in this particular process, in the one part of middle, you have this stocks, or in other words, we call them as inventory. So LKS2 talks about this accounting treatment for the inventories or the stocks, how you treat it in your books. So it describes the amount of cost to be recognized as an asset and carried forward until the related revenues are recognized. This standard provides guidance on the determination of cost and its subsequent recognition as an expense, including any write down to net realizable value. It also provides guidance on the cost formulas that are to be used to assign cost to the inventories. Okay, right. Now let's try to understand this first, and then we will move on with other theory elements. Okay. So what happens in a company which is, let's take the same example, Damro, right? First, what they do, they take raw materials. So they bring in the raw materials for production. Then they process. Then they process. Once the process is completed, you have the finished product. Okay. Then what happens? Sale. Sale, at the point of sale, there is an income as well as an expense. There is an income as well as an expense that you have to recognize. This is how the process is. So raw material to the point of the finished product, we call it as WIP, or not RIP, WIP. That is work in progress. Work in progress. Once the work in progress period is over, you have the finished product now. This finished product is what you call it as stock or inventory. Okay. Sometimes what happens, companies maintain a stock of raw materials also. This amount of cloth, this amount of plastic, this amount of wood, whatever. But basically we talk about the finished product where you will have a stock. Now from this stock only you are going to sell. So when you sell, you generate an income. But when you generate an income, against that income, you have an expense. What is that expense? The cost of this product. If you are doing management accounting, you call it this as cost of sales. Cost of sales. We call it as cost of sales. But here, we call it as cost of the product. So you have a cost and you have a selling price. The selling price, whatever you sold, will be your income. The difference between the income and the cost of the product is your profit. Okay, this is how it happens. Now, our question is, if you are maintaining inventory or stock, how you will recognize this expense? That is what the standard says. How you recognize, or what is the value that I should recognize as cost? Okay, so please take down. Okay. So the scope of the standard. This standard applies to all inventories. So that is all stocks except work in progress arising under construction contracts. So sometimes what happens, these contractors, they undertake contracts which are ongoing. So we don't consider that under this LKS 2. There is a separate standard I have given you last week under LKS 11, which is the construction contracts. Then there is another standard which we will have to learn towards the latter part of our module, financial instruments, that we will take up last. Then biological assets related to agriculture activity, those it will not apply. This standard does not apply to the measurement of inventories held by producers of agriculture and forest products, commodity brokers and dealers, all those will not be applicable. Definition. As per LKS 2, inventories are assets held for sale in the ordinary course of business. So that is what we saw in the board. Because you are holding something on stock and subsequently you will sell it. That is your business. In the process of production for such sale, that is what the work in progress that I told you. When you might have some raw materials, you might have some raw materials for the production. That is also your stock. In the form of materials or supplies to be consumed in the production process in the rendering of services. In simple terms, inventories are finished goods, work in progress. So that is what simply the two elements. I have already explained to you on the board. Those are the two elements that we are talking about under the standard as inventory. Okay. Of course, we can look at raw materials also. Okay. Right. Then we come to an important term which is known as the fair value and the net realizable value. So fair value I am not going to talk about over and over again, which you already know. But the new term that we are going to learn is the net realizable value. Net realizable value. What do you mean by that? That is the estimated selling price in the ordinary course of business less the estimated cost of completion and the estimated cost necessary to make the sale. Okay. So net realizable value, what do you mean by net realizable value is the estimated selling price. Now, sometimes what happens, even though you think that I can sell it for 10,000, there is a bargaining happening. So when the bargaining happening, the price might come down. Okay. So that is why they say estimated selling price. And from that, you have to deduct the estimated cost of completion and the estimated cost necessary to make the sale. Now, sometimes what happens, you have produced so much of goods, but nothing is moving. Nothing is moving. So then you have to do some additional advertising to make the product more demand. So what happens? You might have estimated a price, selling price. Now, all of a sudden, you have to incur an expense to make this product more demand. So that you have to deduct. Then you will get the net realizable value. Net realizable value. Now, this net realizable value will be applicable for all stages of the inventory. It could be trading stocks, or it could be work in progress, or it could be at the stage of raw materials. So as like the other two standards that we learned, here also you have to have the measurement. How do I measure the stocks? So you are given two options. One is the cost. The second one is net realizable value. So I have explained to you what is net realizable value now. Just give me a minute. Okay. So you can have the cost or you can have the net realizable value. So now I told you, when you have these stocks and if you have sold the product, then you have to recognize an expense. I told you, no. Now what we are going to look at is actually, how do I recognize this expense? What are the ways and means available to me under LKS 2? Here comes those. There are two methods that we apply. One is known as first in, first out. The second method, weighted average cost method. So we have two methods basically, first in, first out, and weighted average cost method. But in real business world, there are so many other methods that they use. For example, there could be last in, first out also. Last in, first out. So let's understand what this is, and then you have a question given there. Let's look at it subsequently, right? Now I want you to look at the board. What do they say here? Okay, I'll make use of the same example. Let's say you have finished products now, right? Now finished products, this process will be continuously happening, right? So what happens on, let's say, 10th of January, you have 500 units. On 20th of January, you have another 1,500 units. On 5th of February, you have another 200 units. So this is happening, continuously happening. Now the problem is, at the point of the sale, because at the point of the sale, I will be recognizing an income. Parallelly, I have to recognize the expense, which is my cost of the product. So what happens? I have a plan in my sales. Now, each of these products, let's say, will have a cost. Now, for producing this, I have spent 100 rupees. I'm just taking per unit 100 rupees. For this, I have spent 95. For this, I have spent 105. Just for example, producing these stocks, I have these values. 1 unit, this amount. Now the question is, when I do the sale. So when I do the sale, I have to make I have a business model to decide how am I going to sell this. The first option given there is known as, we call it as FIFO. FIFO means whenever the products come from the warehouse or the manufacturing, you have to stack it in a proper way so that you know what came in first. If you bring this to the showroom first, you will have to sell that first. You understand it? If this came into the showroom first, that has to be sold first. That is 5. So what I will do is, I will identify these 500 units first and sell them first. That is 5. So if I sell that 500 units, let's say the cost of the product is 100. So I am going to sell each unit at 125 rupees. So what do you mean by that? Every time when I sell out of these 500 units, I will recognize an income of 125. I will recognize an expense of 100 rupees. Is that understood? Is that clear? When I say FIFO, what do you mean by that? There might be products coming from the warehouse every day or maybe every month or whatever. That's why I put down some dates. And these are the quantities which came in. So according to my business model, what I will do is, I will sell which came in first. So I will take this 500 units first and I will sell them first. Then only I will go to this 1,500 units. Then only this 200. If I am doing that, that is known the FIFO method. So I will use those units into my income. Parallelly, I have to recognize an expense from that particular unit. So first, which came in first will have to go out first. That is my FIFO method. So under the FIFO method, you know what is the cost to be recognized. So once I complete these 500 units, then I will start with 1500 units. That is at 95. So I will recognize 95. Then I will go to this 200. That is first in, first out. Now parallelly, I am going to explain you last in, first out, which is not in your handout, but I am just explaining it to you. LIFO, we call it as LIFO. Last in, first out. So what came last will go out first. What came in last will go out first. So I have received this amount of stocks, but I'm not going to sell this first, but this. So this 200 will go out first. Okay, but companies don't use this method. Why? Generally, they don't prefer this. Why?
Material.
Sorry, I don't hear you. What did you say?
Some materials are very expensive destroyed.
That is a name that you can. Goods will be outstated, right? What do you mean by that is, if you use the LIFO method, that is last in, first out, what will happen to these units? They might get damaged, they might be stolen, or those might become obsolete. That is outdated, being outdated. So that's why people don't prefer to use the LIFO method. But there are companies, they use LIFO method also, because look at a business like the mobile phone. Mobile phones, every day there is a new model coming. There is a new feature coming. So it is very difficult for them to manage these stocks. You cannot be waiting till this to be sold. No, that is not possible. People might not even like this product. They might totally go into a new product. So all these become obsolete. So they might sometimes, what happens, they might give the latest model which came in the same phone, but one feature different. You will throw that out. So in businesses, LIFO is also used, FIFO is also used, but widely used method is FIFO. Then the next method that is there in the handout is called sorry, weighted average cost method. Weighted average cost method. Now here what happens is, I have received stock 500, 1005, 200. I don't mind which came first, which came last. I don't mind. Every time when a sale happens, I'm going to pick one and sell it. Do you understand that? I don't mind whether which one came first, I have to sell that, or which came last, I have to sell that. No. I have gone and put everything together. Whenever a buyer comes, when he says, I want one, I will pick it from there and sell it. Now, when I pick it from there and sell it, what is the thing I need to know? The expense that I am going to reckon. So now, I don't differentiate this. I have put everything into one basket. I have put everything into one basket. So if I am to look at a price now, or the cost of the product now, I can't use FIFO or I can't use LIFO also, because I don't know the value, because I have put everything in together. So what I do, I will make use of an average. I will make use of an average to do this. So what will happen? That is why we call it as weighted average cost method. Because I don't bother. I am not bothered about which came first or which came last, whether I should sell the first one. No. I have gone and put everything into one basket, pick one, and I sell it. So when I'm selling it, I know the income. But how do I recognize my expense? For that, I will use the weighted average cost method. Weighted average cost method. Is that understood? Any questions on that? If you don't have, just take down this for an example. Then we will look at the question straight away. All clear? Right. So let's go into the question. See whether you can understand that question. So look at that question very carefully. This company, they are receiving goods, that is to their stocks, right? The first part is the stocks, receipt of goods. On 10th of May, they have received 1,500 units at 5 rupees each. Then on 18th June, they have received 1,750 at the rate of 8 rupees. On 3rd of July, they have received 2,750 at 10 rupees each. On 12th of December, they have purchased 2,500 units at 12 rupees each. Then they have sold also. On 11th June, 1,200 units. On 20th July, 3,000 units. On 20th December, 1,300 units. So now the question is, what is the closing value of stocks? What is the closing value of stocks? What is the closing value of stocks? Can you start looking at what is the closing value of stock using FIFO method and then weighted average cost method? You have to do it both ways. So let's try to do it with FIFO method first. FIFO. Can you start? Okay. So I don't know how many of you have started doing it, but let's look at it on the board. Right. So in order to do this question, we can use, you can do it in any form that you want, but just we'll try to maintain a uniform format so that you can use same for exams also. So what we do is, in this question, you have the date of the transactions, you have particulars, that is, you might have purchased or you might have issued. Those are the particulars. Then every time, what is the quantity that you have either issued or purchased? What is the price that you have used for each purchase or issue? Then the value. Then the value. Okay. Now, what happens is, generally, people tend to use this kind of a format. For this, it will be easy when you are doing it in the exams also, but you can use any method or maybe a simplified manner also, you can do it. Okay, right. Let's start with this. 10th of May 2019, there is a purchase or receipt. Okay, it's a receipt. How much I have received? 1,500 units at 5 rupees each. So the value is 7,500. So my closing balance is also 7,500. Is that clear? I have received 1,500 units, 5 rupees each, then 7,500. So then I have to consider what is my next transaction. Now there is a chronological order of transactions. Look, the next receipt of goods is on 18th June. Now we are on 10th May. The next receipt is on 18th June. So if it is on 18th June, you have to see whether prior to this date, whether you have issued anything. If you go to the issue part of it, you see on 11th of June, they have issued 1,200 units. Now what happens? 11th of June 2019, issue. How much I have issued? 1,200 units. Now what do I do? I will put that like this. 1,200 units, because I have issued. It's a negative. 1,200 units I have issued. Now the problem is I am using FIFO. So I have to use FIFO means I have to see what came into the business. What you have received first will have to be issued first. So prior to this date, what I have received first is only this. So what is going to happen? I am going to issue 1,200 units from this 1,500. Okay, from this 1,500. So I am going to use this issue from 1,500. Okay. So I'm just putting an asterisk to say, don't put it in the exams, just for your understanding. I'm taking this 1,200 from this 1,500. So 5 rupees, that is 6,000 negative. So 75 minus 65 means you will have 1,500. Is that understood? Is that understood? Now, how did you get this 1,500 rupees? Oh, 1,500 rupees. On 11th June, what do you mean by this 1,500 rupees? Anyone? How did you get this 1,500 rupees closing balance? Anyone? No. We know that it is 75 minus 6,000 is 1,005. I'm not asking that. Is there any other way that you can look at this 1,005? What is that 1,005 is? This is the closing value of stock. Closing value of stock, right? I'm just writing here closing value of stock. But how did you get that value? That is, you see, 300 units here at the rate of 5 is that 1,000. Do you see? My closing stock, I have 300 units and the value of that stock is 5 rupees each and the closing value is 1,500. You see? That is how you get that 1,005. I know it is 75 minus 6. That is what you got the answer. But the derivation of that 1,005 is 300 units at the rate of 5 rupees. Okay? So that you remember. Right. We'll go to the next transaction. What is the next transaction now? Now you can go to the receipt of 18 June, which is 1,750 units. 18 June. Receipt 1,750 units at 8 rupees each. 1,750 units at 8 rupees each. How much is that? Can you calculate it, please? Is it 14,000?
Yes, sir.
Very good. 14,000. So now 14,000 plus 1,005, 15,500. 15,500. Okay. Now the closing stock is 15,500. Now again, I'm going to ask you the same question. How do I get this 15,500 as the closing stock? How do I get this 15,500 as my closing stock value? That is 300 units at the rate of 5, 1,750 units at the rate of 8. Do you get that point? How did I get this 15,500 is 300 units at the rate of 5 rupees, 1,750 units at 8 rupees each. Okay. So this is what in the exams you will get. They will ask you to find out the closing stock value. So closing stock value in terms of number of units and the price. So you have to be thorough with that. Right, next transaction. Those who are very clear, you can continue with the next steps. So the next receipt is on 3rd of July and the next issue has happened on 20th of July. Okay, so before the issue, there is a receipt again on 3rd of July. On 3rd of July, there is a receipt of 2,750 units. 2,750 units at the rate of 10 rupees. So the prices are going up. 2,750 units at the rate of 10 rupees. So that is 27,500, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the closing balance will be 43,000. Correct? 43,000. Right. Now comes the problem. Now you have a problem in your hand. On 20th of July, you are issuing 3,000 units. On 20th of July. Issue. Now you have to issue 3,000 units. 3,000 units now you have to issue. Now, please follow this. You have to issue 3,000 units. 3,000 units. I can't just pick one from the basket and issue because I'm using FIFO. I'm using FIFO. Because of that, I can't do that. I can't just pick one and issue. I have to go on the basis of this FIFO. So what do? I have to go and look at what is the first item which has come. So the first item which has come is this 1,500 units. Out of these 1,500 units, I have already issued 1,200. Already issued 1,200. So if that is the case, then what is the balance? There is 300 units balance. 300 units balance. Okay? That is what will go out first. So 300 units at the rate of 5 rupees, 1,500. Okay? So I have to issue 3,000 units. Only 300 I have issued. Then what happens? So now, when I issue this 300, the entire 1,005 is gone. Entire 1,005 is now gone. Now then I come to this second stock, 1,750. So what can I do? I can issue the entire 1,050 because I have to make 3,000 units. So I will issue the entire 1,750 at the rate of 8 rupees. That will be 14,000. This is from this particular stock. Okay. So out of the 3,000, I have issued 300 here, another 1,750 here. How much left? How much left?
950.
950.
950.
50.
So 950 is left. From where can I take it? I have to take it from
10
this
rupees.
2,750. 2,750. So I will take 950 from this. Please remember, in exams you don't need to put this asterisk and everything. I'm just explaining it to you how I got it, so that when you look at it later on, you need to know it. So that will be at 10 rupees, which means 9,500. 9,500. Am I correct? Is that correct? So 43,000 minus 1,500 is 41,500. 41,500 minus 14. How much is that? 27,500. 27,500 minus 9,500 is 18,000. Correct? Is that answer is correct?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Now my question is, how did I get this 18,000? Don't tell me deducting all these and this. I'm not asking that. What is my closing stock value in terms of units and the price? So I have made it very easy to you now. The question. What is this 18,000 means? What is this 18,000 is? Anyone? What is 18,000?
Out of 2,750,
Yes.
we took 950.
Yes.
So there is a balance 1,800 into
Yes,
10.
correct.
18.
Very good. So 1,005 was the initial units came in. 1,200 went here, 300 went here. That's why I wrote it separately for you all to make understanding. So 1,002 plus 3, 1,005 marked off. 1,750 against this 1,750, that is also gone. So what is remaining is this 2,750 minus this 950, which is 1,800 units. What is the price? 10 rupees. 1,800 units at 10 rupees means 18,000. 18,000. So you have to be very careful in exams. You should be able to figure out this. Okay. Then the last two transactions on 12th of December. There is a receipt again. How much is that? 2,500 units at the rate of 12. How much is that? 30,000, no?
Yeah.
So 30 plus 18 means 48,000. 30 plus 18 means 48,000. Then the last transaction on 20th of December, 1,200 units, 1,300 units. 20th of December, you have issued 1,300. So from where will I issue that 1,300? From the balance of 1,800, because 2,750 already 950 went out, 1,800 balance. So from that 1,300 is going on. At what rate? At the rate of 10 rupees. So that is 13,000. Correct? 13,000. You will get 35,000. 35,000. So now tell me, how did you get this 35,000? That is 500 units at 10 rupees, 2,500 units at 12 rupees. Okay. that clear? Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to leave this weighted average costing to you. You all have to do it. I will do it in the next class. Okay. So I'll just give you a hint how you can do it. Now here we did it in this way because it was easy for us to monitor the items. Right? You can do the same thing in a slightly different format also. Right? Okay. So you have date, particulars, but here what we will do is we will repeat those columns this will be your receipts and this will be your issue. Okay. So what do you have here? Quantity, price, value. Again quantity, price, value. And then finally you have the running balance or closing. You can do it like this also by differentiating it. Same, you capture the same information, but you you record the receipts on separately 3 columns and the issue on separately 3 columns. Okay, you can do it that way also. You can do it that way also. Just think about it. Why I am giving you this template is because for the weighted average cost method, you can use this. Weighted average cost method, you can use this. Okay. So I am leaving that to you. You all have to think about it and do the same question using the weighted average cost method. Okay. So I am leaving that to you all. And also, just give a try of this also. Right? This is a question which came on March 2019. I don't know how many of you have question papers. If not, just take a photograph of this. I think I should have put it in the handout. It's there, right? This is available in the handout, is it?
Yes, sir. It's available.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I want you all to do these two. One is you have to do the previous question on the weighted average cost method. You can use any format. Don't stick to what I have showed you. You can use any method, any format, but try to make it very simple without complicating it much. That is what you have to do. So without complicating much, you have to simplify the format and do it. And then look at this question. That is March 2019. That also I want you all to give it a try. Please don't, those who are having any model answer books or anything, don't refer to those. I don't think, no, the model answer book doesn't have the workings, but it will have the answer, right? But don't refer to that. Try to do it by yourself and be mindful that whatever the workings that you do is only for 2 marks. Okay, this is the multiple out in the given in the multiple choice part, so that is 2 marks. So for 2 marks you have to find out these two, that is what is the closing value of inventory on using FIFO as well as the VAT method. Okay, so we'll stop there. I have already uploaded another handout which is on sole proprietorships. So just go through that also and make sure you do these 2 questions as well. We will continue next week. Okay. So take care and have a pleasant weekend.